Humanity's first contact with the Vorta was nothing short of a miracle. They were a race unlike any other, an advanced, peaceful species that had mastered the art of traveling through the vast, uncharted space between galaxies. When the Vorta made themselves known, they arrived with promises of technological marvels that could revolutionize life on Earth. In exchange for Earth's resources, they offered to share their knowledge, advancing humanity's science and technology beyond anything the world had ever imagined. At first, the agreement seemed almost too good to be true. The Vorta were everything humanity had hoped for in an alien race, gracious, intelligent, and seemingly benevolent. They spoke of peace, cooperation, and a shared future among the stars. Their technology was beyond anything humanity could have dreamed of. Energy sources, advanced medical treatments, and even techniques to prolong life were offered freely, with no strings attached. The world welcomed them with open arms, and the exchange began. But as the years passed, something began to feel off. It was subtle at first, strange dreams, odd visions, and a pervasive sense of unease that seemed to spread across the globe. People began to see things in the shadows, fleeting images of monstrous figures and horrific landscapes that left them gasping for air upon waking. These nightmares weren't just dreams. They felt real, as if something was lurking just beyond the edge of their perception, waiting to strike. At first, humanity brushed it off as the result of stress, overwork, or the strain of integrating alien technology into everyday life. But the phenomenon grew, spreading like a virus, infecting more and more people. Families reported waking up in terror, their hearts racing, drenched in sweat, terrified of what they had seen in their dreams. The images were always the same, dark, twisted figures that seemed to step out of the very fabric of their nightmares. Creatures that clawed their way into the waking world, only to fade away upon the morning light, leaving their victims with a lingering sense of dread. As the nightmares grew stronger, so too did the influence of the Vorta. Their presence, once a blessing, began to feel more like a shadow over humanity. Governments that had once celebrated their alliance with the Vorta began to question their intentions. A small faction of humans, including scientists and military personnel, started investigating the strange phenomenon, digging deeper into the Vorta's past. What they discovered was far darker than they could have imagined. The Vorta, it turned out, were not just peaceful beings offering technology to humanity. They were feeding off the very fears that humanity had been experiencing. They were harvesting the nightmares, the anxiety, the terror, and using it as a source of energy to sustain themselves. The Vorta's psychic abilities allowed them to tap into the human subconscious, and every time a human slept or experienced fear, the Vorta would feed. The more they harvested, the stronger they became. And with every passing day, the creatures that had once been nothing more than figments of human imagination were growing stronger, more real, and more terrifying. The humans who had uncovered the truth began to piece together the horrifying nature of the Vorta's manipulation. The aliens were not just visitors, they were predators, feeding off the collective fears of humanity. The more they fed, the more monstrous they became, their forms twisting and warping in response to the growing terror they were harvesting. The once calm and peaceful Vorta were beginning to show signs of corruption, their features becoming grotesque and unsettling as they absorbed more and more fear. As the human faction worked tirelessly to expose the truth, the nightmares grew more tangible. People began to see the monsters in their waking hours. Shadows moved of their own accord, twisted and distorted figures stalked the streets, and in the dark corners of rooms, eyes glowed with malice. The creatures of humanity's deepest fears were no longer confined to the mind. They were real, and they were hunting. The Vorta had underestimated the depth of humanity's nightmares. They had assumed that their manipulations could go unnoticed, that humanity would never question the price of the advanced technology they had offered. But now, as the nightmares became a tangible reality, the people of Earth began to fight back. They could no longer trust the Vorta, and they could no longer rely on the technology they had brought. Every piece of alien technology was now suspect. Every act of kindness had a hidden agenda. In the chaos that followed, humanity found itself in a war on two fronts. The Vorta's monstrous forms were now a constant presence, feeding off humanity's fear and terror. And the very nightmares that had once haunted the minds of individuals were now stalking the streets, hunting in packs, their shapes constantly shifting and changing to match the worst fears of their victims. Some people saw beasts with eyes like burning coals. Others saw creatures made of writhing tendrils and jaws that never seemed to close. There were whispers of things that could not be described, of horrors so deep in the human psyche that they could not be named. In the midst of this chaos, the humans who had discovered the truth banded together, trying to fight not just for their survival, but for their sanity. They knew that the Vorta had to be stopped. But the battle was not just physical, it was psychological. Humanity had to overcome its deepest fears, confront the very nightmares the Vorta had been feeding on, and somehow find a way to break the Vorta's hold on their minds. The Vorta had never anticipated that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its technology, but in its ability to confront and overcome its own terror. The final battle took place on a desolate, forgotten world where the Vorta had built their central hive, a place where the psychic energy they fed on was strongest. The human faction, armed with the knowledge they had gathered, infiltrated the hive, determined to end the Vorta's reign of terror. As they made their way through the alien structure, they were confronted by the darkest manifestations of their own fears, twisted into monstrous forms by the Vorta's influence. But humanity fought back, not with weapons, but with willpower and sheer determination, facing their darkest nightmares head-on. In the end, it was humanity's collective refusal to be broken, to allow their fears to control them, that shattered the Vorta's power. The aliens, weakened by their own monstrous transformation, were forced to retreat into the darkness between stars, leaving behind the chaos they had created. But even in victory, humanity was forever changed. The nightmares, though banished, would never be forgotten. The terror had been real, and the scars it left would remain in the minds of humanity for generations to come. The Vorta had underestimated Earth's resilience, and they had paid the price.